Hello, I'm Michelle, and welcome to Shippo's first webinar in our 2018 Holiday Advice series. For those of you who are new to Shippo, it's a shipping software for online retailers. Today, we're joined by our on-demand warehousing and fulfillment company, Flexe. We know expectations for businesses are sky high, so we're here to discuss tactics that will really move the needle for your operations team and help you exceed those consumer expectations upon delivery. It's my pleasure to introduce our experts on today's webinar. We have Richard Garcia, Director of Business Development at Shippo. Richard enables successful processes for partners in the fulfillment space, including warehouse management and inventory management. Richard is Shippo's resident e-commerce and shipping expert. He's worked in the parcel shipping industry since 2011. And we have Megan Everett, Vice President of Operations at Flexe. She is responsible for defining best practices and expanding the rigor of the Flexe operations team. She has 15 plus years of experience in retail operations and knows how to put out fires without breaking a sweat. Here's a quick overview of what we're covering today. Before we dive into the agenda, we have a brief poll to help us better understand who's listening in and what your needs are. Please take a few seconds to answer these two questions. All right, great. Thank you all for participating. We're seeing a lot of you have 1 to 4 warehouses, and many of you are interested in expanding your warehouse network, which is great because today we'll show you how to do just that. Back to our agenda. We'll briefly discuss the current landscape, taking a look at how Amazon has impacted fulfillment for retailers. Then we'll dive into our specific recommended tactics and tips for how to offer fast delivery. And we'll end with a Q&A with Richard and Megan. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please submit them through the Q&A function, and we'll try to get to all of them at the end. If you're experiencing any technical difficulties or have a support-related question, please submit those to us via chat. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Richard.
All right, thanks, Michelle. As we know, Amazon has had a major effect on how consumers perceive fulfillment and delivery. In fact, Amazon is responsible for almost half of all retail e-commerce sales in the US. Amazon has a large looming presence in e-commerce. And no matter what you sell online, you have to consider Amazon as the competitor. They drive industry trends, and they happen to influence how your consumers and customers think. In particular, Amazon Prime has set the standard on cost and delivery speed, specifically through its free 2-day shipping offering. Customers expect all businesses to offer fast and free shipping these days. If your shipping fees and transit times don't meet these consumer expectations, consumers oftentimes abandon their cart and head over to competitor sites, or they can just mosey on over to Amazon. So, how are businesses responding to consumer demand for fast and free shipping? We've seen that 53% of businesses are using a 2 to 3 day shipping service. This is a great option for certain delivery needs, but it can get expensive for packages traveling much longer distances. And we're talking about going from something like coast to coast. The scary stat is 44% of businesses don't even have an option faster than 4-day shipping. A lot of people are looking at ground as the primary option. So now that you have more details on consumer sentiment, we want to give you some valuable tactics for offering faster delivery. And with that, I'll pass it off to Megan to get us started.
Great, thanks, Richard. So what I love about retail logistics is that it impacts everyone. I see it in my role at Flexe. when my team gets the chance to help companies expand their fulfillment networks, and I see it as a consumer every time I make a purchase. If it were easy, every company would offer fast free delivery. But as we know, it can get expensive quickly without the right plan in place. So companies like yours need solutions that are tailored for them without giving up your margin. So how do you do that? In order to improve your delivery promise, it really comes down to how accurately you fulfill on the promise you're advertising. On the logistics side, this means some careful considerations. You need to have the right size fulfillment network. You need to have a clear view of your inventory across this network. You need to know which carriers to use and how to leverage your data for continual improvement. All of these things will help you and your team put the right inventory in the right location so that you can optimize that last mile. So let's go back to Amazon for a minute. They have more than 300 facilities that are moving goods at all times. However, I don't know any other retailer that can match what they've built, but you don't need to. A better delivery promise means shortening that last mile. Our standard network analysis shows that retailers need 8 fulfillment centers to reach 98% of customers with 2-day ground delivery. Doing this would require 2 key things: more fulfillment centers in your network and having a fulfillment solution that processes your orders quickly and efficiently. So let's take a look at this slide. The good news is you don't need 300. You don't even need 8 or 16. Improving your delivery times is achievable and is easier than you think. It really just requires an interconnected system. And if you make the jump to 2 facilities, you can reach 70% of your customers in 2 days or fewer. Increase that number to 3, and you can reach about 84%. So how do you expand your warehouse network? Adding more fulfillment centers closer to your demand will improve your delivery promise by reducing your transportation time and cost. But I know what you're thinking. If you're struggling with visibility and performance in just 1 fulfillment center, expanding to 2 or 3, let alone 8, seems impossible. But it starts with just asking some basic questions. Where does your inventory come from? How would that impact where you would store it? How accurate are your forecasts? What are your sales channels? Going through these questions will help you analyze your particular scenario, what's unique to your company. And if you're already in multiple facilities, you know, having a unified view of inventory and demand across locations makes it easier to know where and when to replenish your goods. So if you have your inventory in multiple locations, you have to ensure that you have a unified view. This will allow you to route your inventory to the right locations. That all starts with your customer order data. Reporting will also inform you on your high-performing SKUs. You need to have real-time visibility to your inventory levels and changes on both the inbound and outbound side. But that's just a part of it. You have to be tracking KPIs on the warehouse floor. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter that you can reach your customers with 2-day ground delivery if your warehouse is not shipping on time or completing orders. These are just a few of the KPIs that you could be using, but what's most important is that you're having regular discussions and setting clear expectations with your partners. Ground shipping requires for them to get their orders out quickly and accurately. You need to be monitoring this data in real time so that you can be proactive. If your plan is to wait till your customer calls to inquire about their order, you've lost them. Even with all this visibility and reporting, mistakes can happen and orders can arrive later than expected. Which brings us to the reality we all know. There's only so much you can control. My team talks to retailers every day, and we know fulfillment inventory management is not a one-size-fits-all solution. So the key going into this peak season is for you to have a plan in place for what you can control. Here's just a few suggestions. Sales and operations alignment. Make sure the items you're promoting have the inventory supply to support that. Dynamic order routing. You don't want to be doing this manually. You'll be buried in peak if you have to select which warehouse is going to fill each order. If you're launching new products, make sure your dates are realistic. You don't want to risk setting expectations. And don't overpromise. Disappointing your customers on when their packages are going to arrive will damage your brand. So remember, it's busy enough, less is more. Don't overcomplicate things. Focus on your items that you know drive sales. Put your money into purchasing and stocking those key SKUs. And always, always attach a forecast to every product. Without this goal, you won't be able to effectively evaluate your results and make adjustments going forward. So let's just take a quick look at a few real-world examples of actual customers and their different approaches to the inventory management based on the delivery promise they're shooting for. My team has worked with all three of these companies, and the reason I selected them is because they span totally different product categories and have vastly different product characteristics and even inventory profiles. But what this demonstrates is that what's best for one company may not be what's best for you. Only you know what's going to work for your company and what changes are possible. However, it's like the saying goes, if you change nothing, nothing will change. You have to start somewhere. And all these companies chose to make a change and were able to realize tangible and measurable improvements that ultimately benefited the company and their customers. So just remember the things you can do. Start those internal conversations, ask the difficult questions, then set a goal for what progress you'd like to make and measure it. You can then take that first step towards improving your delivery promise. So with that, I'll hand it back to Richard.
Great. Thanks so much, Megan. So let's dive a little bit deeper into executing some of these strategies, especially with respect to shipping. So another tactic to have is to access shipping rates from multiple carriers, especially before the holiday season gets underway. This approach allows you to do a few things. First of all, have backups if it's necessary. Another thing is to have a variety of service levels and delivery estimates to ensure that you can meet the needs of your customers' expectations. For example, if you're offering free shipping, having options will ensure that the delivery times, if it has to get there faster, you can ensure that you cover the costs. So, and lastly, compare the service levels and help optimize the rates. In terms of speeding up deliveries, you want to take a hard look at your data for inefficiencies. Your shipping history and your customer data should inform you where to house your inventory. So that goes back to some of Megan's points. And what carriers and which service levels to use. In terms of using your data, you want to make sure that you meet all of your contractual obligations. For example, if you commit to spending $1 million with FedEx year to ensure you lock in your negotiated rates, you can use your data to ensure you're on track to meet those requirements and guarantee your savings. Also, you can cross-reference some of your shipping data with your profit and loss statements just to see how your deliveries are impacting your bottom line. And it's a great idea to review your customer satisfaction data. You can take a look at something like your Net Promoter Score to see if there are any correlations between your deliveries and the consumer or customer sentiment. When it comes to using data to optimize your shipping strategy, your tracking history also can be mission critical. What this does is it helps you identify inefficiencies in your delivery network if there are any. With this deep data, you can strengthen your fulfillment center network and identify weak points in your process. You may want to figure out where you can grow and what processes are inefficient. First, you want to make sure you're surfacing your tracking data. A shipping technology, similar to ours, it could be a great tool to capture all of your tracking data, or you could use an in-house or homegrown built solution. Then you'll want to organize this data in a way that will allow you to aggregate this information and find important correlations and patterns. Some common data points that you may want to consider are delivery times and how they compare to the actual carrier pickup times, location information, as well as the status. Sometimes just aggregating the data will reveal some very interesting findings that you can extrapolate and analyze. If not, you can always make some of your own hypotheses and test against them. After you've identified and validated this with the data, you can also create some rules or business rules to navigate around some of these issues that you found. I want to talk a little bit more about tracking. So here's some examples that you could read through that you may encounter as you take a deep dive into your tracking data. First, you may notice that packages leaving a certain warehouse are in a sort of pre-transit delivery status for much longer than other inventory locations. If that's the case, you may want to work with your operations team and figure out if that's the cause, or your fulfillment partner to figure out some potential solutions to the issue. Also, you might notice that there are certain delivery routes that seem slower than the rest of your network. If they're very popular and it's becoming a problem with your customers, reach out to your operations team, your fulfillment team, or possibly even your carrier to brainstorm for solutions on how to circumvent these issues. It may be as simple as experimenting with a few other origin locations or selecting different carrier service levels. Finally, you may notice some inefficiencies with certain carrier routes or locations. You can work with your carrier contacts to troubleshoot these issues, but ultimately you want to arm yourself with information and data about your delivery processes and network. This will allow you to make decisions that will help improve the experience for your customers.
All right, before we dive into our Q&A, let's quickly recap the key takeaways. First, you have to get your data into shape, especially your tracking data, to help you make decisions about your inventory management and delivery process. Once you have insights to work with, make sure you also have access to real-time reporting on inventory levels and order data, so you can make game-time decisions to ensure efficiency. Finally, acknowledge what you can and cannot control, and don't overpromise your customers things that are outside your control. Now, let's open it up for Q&A. If you have a question, please enter it on the Q&A tab. We're already starting to see questions rolling in, so let's get started. The first question we have: how do you figure out the type of warehouse and delivery diversity that's right for your company? And Megan, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Thanks, Michelle. Ultimately, honestly, it kind of comes down to a combination of three different things. First, what do your customers want? Second, what are the types of products that you sell? And most importantly, what's realistic for you as an organization today? No matter where you stand, you want to make sure you can deliver on your promise so you aren't disappointing your customers. However, if you want or need to diversify your network, start by testing as much as you can. If you can offer more options, do it and see how customers respond. If you can't expand your delivery options across all of your demand, just run delivery promotions in targeted areas and just see if that motivates sales. You won't know if your customers prefer fast or free shipping until you give them the option. Once you start to do this and you can see the trends, then you can build a delivery network that's optimized for your customers.
Great, thank you, Megan. And this next question is also for you. Where should I put my first and second, third, etc. warehouse?
Yeah, we get this a lot. And honestly, the answer is it's different for every business, but it depends on where you currently house your inventory and if that matches your demand pattern. So let's say, for example, you're importing goods from China and you have space in LA or somewhere near the port, but it turns out that most of your demand is in like New York City. In that case, it would make sense to add more capacity on the East Coast in order to reduce your transportation times and costs. But not every scenario is so obvious. Part of what we do at Flexe is perform a network analysis that analyzes the customer order data, your product dimensions, and all your transportation scenarios. And then we can help build an incremental path to allow you to expand that's cost effective and achievable.
Thank you. Our next question. If I have more warehouses, how will that impact my carrier costs? Are there other cost savings I should consider as I'm making these decisions? Richard, I'm going to pass this one to you.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'll answer that really quickly. We found that, or if I'm thinking about it, I think I would say there are a couple of ways that would be very useful. One thing is about moving your inventory from warehouse to warehouse. So if you're taking a look at one fulfillment center to another and you want to start optimizing by opening up another warehouse and then housing the goods over there, you want to take a look at maybe partnering up with a good line haul partner and making sure that you move that stuff in bulk, as well as taking a look at you're going to be looking at your forecast in conjunction with what you need to move over with the line haul. So you may not want to send, obviously, individual parcels or packages across the country. You want to do that stuff in bulk from place to place and then start sprinkling them through to optimize. Another thing I would say is very important is decreasing the distance for the outbound parcels just in general. If you're taking a look, obviously looking at some of the data or information that Megan showed, if you want to get stuff in 2 days, you may want to open up, closer to a few warehouses up to 8 if you want to get stuff there much, much faster. So really just figuring out what that right mix is, forecasting for demand, and taking advantage of these carrier relationships and then figuring out what is best for your business to ensure that you have good and reliable pickup options.
Thanks, Richard. Our next question. What if I don't need all the space in a warehouse, but I want more locations? Megan, I'm passing it off to you.
Great. Well, the good thing is that's one of the things that makes Flex so different. You no longer are held to a contract of a specific amount of space. We list providers that have excess space. It turns out like 30% of industrial capacity is unused. So we're helping provide that space from those warehouses that have it. So you're really only paying for what you're using from the transactional model. And for the warehouses, they can lease out that space and you can use it as needed throughout the year as your demand fluctuates.
Oh, sorry about that. I just noticed we were on mute. Let me re-ask the question. Can you guys hear me okay? Yes, okay, excellent. The question is, with the holidays right around the corner, what do you recommend I focus on? In other words, what's realistic for me to accomplish before the holiday season gets underway? And Richard, I'm going to pass it to you.
Yeah, there are a couple things that I could think of for what you should be thinking about when holiday season gets underway. And maybe you're already thinking about these things. One is more of an alignment between the other folks that are either in the warehouse, but also the folks who are helping prep the promotions, like the sales and marketing team. So if you're running promotions ahead of time, you may want to make sure that you have the adequate amount of inventory, and then even drilling down into that a little bit more, just understanding what days are going to be the busiest, because during the holiday season, you may have peaks and valleys that may be a little bit abnormal from your normal year-round shipping. So also make sure that you have some supplies that are adequate enough to ensure you can get all the stuff shipped out.
Awesome. All right, our next question. I noticed that Shippo offers Ascendia as a shipping option, but we have to have our own accounts. Have you considered offering your customers the option of using a Shippo account for Ascendia like you do for UPS or DHL?
Yeah, I'll take that. This is Richard again. In terms of how we work with carriers, a lot of the times it is based on what is optimized for working with the shipping carrier. In Ascendia's case, we would like to, but for the most part, operationally speaking, I think it's best that that it is individual accounts, and part of it has to do with the the consolidation aspect of it and the bulk pickup. So currently, it is a Ascendia credential to plug into our system, but we're always open to having further conversation with the carriers for flexibility around who may own the account, whether it's us or the direct customer or merchant.
Great, and we have time for one last question. Let me read it out loud. So we have $7 million in total freight spend. We use a large 3PL as we do not feel we are big enough to break that spend up and still get the customer service we need. Is this the right strategy? We are taking advantage of many of the top carriers, but also paying a middleman. And Megan, I'm going to pass this over to you.
Great. So, I mean, really, I would say it kind of comes down to what resources you have available to put towards this. If you're happy with the customer service that you're getting and you don't have someone to tackle this, then don't rock the boat. But you certainly are approaching that level where you could put resources towards this and start owning those yourself and establish that relationship and gain that leverage. And then ultimately you'll realize those savings. So it's a little bit of what makes sense from you right now from a resource standpoint. And what would be the consequences of making a change, especially right now during peak season.
Thank you all so much for joining us today. We will be making this webinar recording available for download, and we'll send that to all attendees shortly. Before you go, if you could please provide feedback for this webinar in our one question poll, we would very much appreciate it. If you have any additional questions, please get in touch at the email addresses on this screen. And stay tuned for more Shippo webinars in the next few weeks to help businesses prep for the holiday season.